We're getting lectures on Christianity from the media. Pretty amazing. Trump did say something stupid about due process the other day, and the fact is, though, that the left has been opposing due process, the most basic of our constitutional rights, for a long time, particularly on the subject of gun control. When was the last time you heard a Democratic politician praise the Australian solution to gun violence? A lot. If you're watching CNN, you probably heard it today. They say it all the time. Question is, do you know anything about how Australia implemented gun control? Well, confiscation. They took the guns away from the population by force, and not just from criminals and people who've been convicted of wrongdoing. The government of Australia took guns from law-abiding people who had done nothing wrong. They punished the innocent. What exactly did that look like? Well, here's an ad from one of Australia's gun confiscation efforts. It shows naked men in a prison shower and warns the public to turn their guns in or else they'll be sent to prison too. Effectively, the government threatened law-abiding citizens with prison rape if they didn't surrender their guns. That's what liberals are calling for in this country every time they talk about the Australian solution. And there are a lot more ads like that. We're going to tweet them out tonight. By the way, that's what the assault weapons ban is. Democrats are pushing for a law that would outlaw more than 200 kinds of firearms, as well as all guns that have various irrelevant cosmetic features like bayonet lugs and lots of other things people who wrote the law know nothing about. If that law passes, and it might if the Democrats take Congress, you will be punished. You'll have fewer rights. But wait a second. You've done nothing wrong. You never shot anybody. You have no plans to shoot anybody. Doesn't matter. Democrats will treat you the same way they treat convicted felons, as unworthy to be trusted with firearms. Meanwhile, their bodyguards will still have the most powerful guns available. Of course they will, because they can, because they're in charge and you're not. The left is also demanding the government bar people under 21, these are people who are eligible to vote and serve in the military, from buying firearms. Now, again, most people under 21 haven't done anything wrong. They haven't been convicted of a crime or committed crimes. But a few of them have. So Democrats are saying all must be punished. Imagine applying the same standard to other constitutional rights. For example, let's say somebody shouted fire in a crowded theater and scores died. Would the rest of us lose our right to free speech? These are real questions. They're inconvenient so soon after the massacre in Parkland, for which the country is still grieving. But we should remember, this is a country worth living in precisely because we take the Constitution seriously. When we stop taking it seriously, it won't be a country worth living in. President Trump seems to have remembered that. Many on the left never knew it, and they don't care anyway. You often hear progressives say they want an honest conversation about guns. Well, of course we do too. And that's why we've invited the heads of almost every different gun control group to come on this show and tell us what they really believe. We'll let them talk. Mike Bloomberg's group, George Soros's groups, Gabby Gifford's group. They've all refused to come on. They're delighted to appear on CNN, obviously, where they're celebrated and never challenged. We'd still like to have that conversation because we think it's important. So we're joined tonight by someone who will come on, Antoine C. Wright. He's founder and CEO of Blueprint Strategy, and he joins us tonight. Antoine, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker, for having me.
Well, I appreciate it because so many others with your views won't. It's an analogy, but I think it's still worth talking about. What I just mentioned a minute ago about another constitutional right, the freedom of speech. If someone were to misuse that freedom in a way that was illegal, would that mean the rest of us had to give up some of our right to the freedom of speech?
Absolutely not, Tucker, but here's what we all have to do. We all have to take a deep breath and focus on the issue at hand. For me, the focus on the issue at hand is trying to figure out how we prevent another mass shooting in this country, right, so one more parent can not have to deal with burying their child once again. That's where my focus is. I don't want to make this, Tucker, I don't want to make this about left or right, liberal or conservative. This is simply about trying to do something to prevent another mass shooting.
Well, obviously, but wait, hold on. I totally agree with that. I think every decent person, maybe even some non-decent people agree. Nobody thinks these are good. They're hurting the country. We're all against them. The question is, what do you do? There are policy solutions being floated, and the question is, are they good ideas or not? Are they consistent with the Constitution or not? So what is the solution to these shootings that you think would work?
Well, here's what I think reasonable people believe. We know that somewhere north of 65% of the American people believe we should do something. Here's what I think we should do. One, I'm not one of those people who say we need to take away everyone's gun. I know that's the fallback Republican talking point, and Democrats want to take away their guns. That's not true. I'm a proud weapon owner. I appreciate being able to carry my gun freely in this country. But here's what I do believe. If you have mental health issues, there's probably a good chance that you should not be able to have a firearm. If we can close the Charleston loophole, I'm from South Carolina. My dear friend and mentor, Senator Clemente Pinckney, was killed in a church in Charleston because Dylan Ruth was able to purchase a gun when the background check did not come back in a certain amount of days.
But hold on, let's just get to the first one. So the law currently says, and since you're a gun owner, you know this because you had to fill it out on the federal form, that if you've been adjudicated mentally ill, if you've been determined to have a mental illness, you can't buy a gun. That's already the law. So what changes would you make since, again, that's already the law? Well,
here's the thing. Different states have different laws. Recently in South Carolina, we recently passed legislation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That's federal. That's on the federal form, the federal background check the DOJ does on every gun owner. If you buy a gun, you have to fill this out. And you're not allowed to buy a gun if you've been adjudicated mentally ill. So what specific change would you make?
Well, I think the word mental illness, it varies. One doctor can diagnose you one thing, one the other. But I think we need to be consistent when we talk about the issue of mental health issues, and that's just one thing I would change. The other thing
what would the change? I mean, I don't want to be obstinate, but I just want to get to the specifics here because the specifics matter. It's public policy. What specific change would you make?
On the issue specifically of mental health. In some places, people with mental illnesses can go into a gun show or either online and buy a weapon. You and I both knew that. That's why we just saw that happen. Hold on,
we just saw that happen in Florida. A kid with mental illness was able to buy a gun because the school refused to turn him over to the cops. But how would you stop that? Like, what would you do specifically?
Tucker, that's my point. We have to have comprehensive, extensive background checks so that we can prevent another person. Another person who has mental health issues from having a gun.
Okay. But here's where we're having an actual bipartisan, real conversation. We both agree that the mentally ill, dangerous people shouldn't have guns. But what do you do specifically? We already have a comprehensive background check. Would you, I don't know, tell me your solution. I'm sincerely interested.
Tucker, if you let me finish getting through, we're going to have to tighten up on closing the gap to make sure that these laws are in place, making sure they're truly enforced.
But the law's already there, so I'm confused.
But again, enforcement, there are laws on the books, but we have to enforce them and tighten and strengthen them where we need to.
Okay. Let me ask you this question.
I think you can agree with that, right, Tucker?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. It doesn't actually mean anything. I mean, it's the kind of thing that all of us, even Jimmy Kimmel, can sort of nod and feel virtuous, but like...
Tucker, it means enforcing the laws of their own books. There's no reason why this young man in Florida shouldn't have been able to
Let me ask you a question, though, since we're
Sure.
on this subject. So there are hundreds of thousands, close to 500,000 returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who get money from the federal government. A lot of them are on medication because they have a mental illness. They've said that. It's called PTSD. Should they be allowed to buy guns?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, you said
You can fundamentally disagree. I'm
just searching for honest answers from people. I don't have to agree. I just want to know what you thought. And you said it honestly, and I appreciate that.
But Tucker, can I give you a few more things that I think reasonable people
Well, we're almost out of time, but hit me really quick. Yep.
I think reasonable people agree that we need to make sure that if you're under the age of 18, you should not be able to purchase an assault weapon in this country. I think
should you be able to carry one as a member of our armed services at 17, which is now the law?
As a member, you are trained to fight war as a member of the armed services.
But if we don't trust you, hold on. Can I ask you a question?
Let me finish. Law enforcement and members of our military, I think that is the one exception I think Democrats and Republicans
But if we don't trust you to carry a gun, why are we trusting you to vote?
Tucker, that's apples and oranges.
No, it's not. I mean,
course it is.
People who vote run the country.
We're talking about.
So you're not trustworthy enough to carry a firearm, but you can vote.
Tucker. When you vote, go into the booth to vote. You don't run the risk of being able to kill someone.
That's where you're wrong, Antoine. Read a little history.
Oh my God! Well, please tell me how, Tucker. I would love to hear that.
There have been a lot of maniacs who killed a lot of people who have been elected to the ballot box, as you may know. Anyway, we're out of time. Thank you, Antoine. Appreciate seeing you. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent. He's an NRA TV contributor, and he joins us tonight. So a lot of people are saying, Dan, as you know, why should, here you had this kid who was 19, he was a nutcase, shouldn't have had a gun in the first place, yet he bought it legally. So maybe we should ban all people his age or under 21 from buying guns, to which you say?
I say I'm really sick of liberals. I mean, like, really sick, like getting physically ill listening to them because they can't be consistent on an argument. You know what's fascinating about your prior guest? I've argued with liberals about so-called gun control, which you accurately called people control, you're right, for days now. And they'll make opposing arguments. Just a few days ago, a guy said to me, well, you know, you have to be 21 to buy alcohol. I said, you're talking about the purchase of a mind-altering substance, not the operation of a firearm. Yet this guy comes around and talking about voting, he makes the exact opposite argument. Well, they're apples and oranges. So is booze and guns. But it doesn't matter to liberals because they'll tell you the same thing, Tucker, about immigration laws and abortion laws. They'll be like, you know what? Those laws don't matter. Immigration, we don't really have to follow those laws. Matter of fact, people don't, and we should give them government benefits. Abortion laws, don't put any abortion laws on the books. They'll all be ignored. But gun laws, those will really work. Those will definitely stop homicidal maniacs from getting guns and preying on the rest of us while we're all unarmed. This is so beyond stupid that we're all losing IQ points by debating with these people.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, abortion, which is not mentioned in the Constitution, is the beating heart of our constitutional rights, whereas guns, which are in the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights, oh, that's not even there. So I guess I appreciate people who are sincerely trying to solve this problem because all of us recognize how horrible it is. But are you starting to suspect that a lot of these so-called solutions are not really about making the public safer, but about something else?
Tucker, 15 years in law enforcement and 5 years studying the issue and doing commentary on it. This is what people have to understand. Get this through your heads and don't ever forget it. There are two parallel tracks for gun owners, okay? For liberals, let's do this slow. Here's one, here's two, okay? On the first track, you have legal gun owners. You have to go through a background check, fill out a 4473. You can't be a prohibited possessor, okay? That's how good people, non-criminals, get guns. Then you have track number two, people who steal them and buy them on the black market. Right. They don't care about track number one, Tucker, at all. So you have a law, by the way, which only impacts good law-abiding people and does nothing for criminals. Let me ask you this, Tucker. What other law works like that? Do burglary laws affect you? Has Tucker Carlson ever thought about burglarizing a house and be like, darn, they don't affect you? The burglary laws you don't care about at all. You're like, good, let's have maximum penalties for burglary laws. Gun laws are the only laws that affect the law-abiding and don't affect criminals one bit. They have a thriving black market for guns. I mean, well, it's absurd.
Our immigration laws keep out millions of potential software engineers, but are ignored by 11 million people from the third world who are living here because they didn't care. Right. No, it's a perfect example.